My family made me quit my job to be my golden sister's full-time nanny. Now they're expecting me to do it for free, and I'd been sitting at my desk at work, staring at my phone, watching it light up with my mom's name for the fourth time that day. She was persistent, always had been, but today, her persistence felt heavier, like it carried more weight than the usual "hope you're eating well" texts. I finally picked it up, taking a deep breath before answering. "Hey, Mom." "Oh, honey. I've been trying to reach you," she said, her voice filled with an urgency that immediately put me on edge. "It's about your sister, well, Haley and Brandon." "Really?" Of course, it was about Haley. It was always about Haley. "What's up?" I asked, trying to keep the impatience out of my voice. "Well," she began, taking a deep breath as if she were about to deliver life-changing news. "You know how they've been so stressed with the kids and everything?" I hadn't actually heard that, but I nodded, sensing where this was going. "Well, they need some time away. Brandon's been working so hard, and Haley deserves a break, you know? She's been doing so much with the little ones." I could feel my jaw tighten. Haley and Brandon had 3 kids, Mason, Ava, and Caleb, all under the age of 6. And while I didn't doubt that parenting was exhausting, I'd always felt that Haley wasn't exactly pulling all-nighters. She had a nanny, went to regular spa days, and, based on her social media, wasn't exactly struggling. Mom continued, oblivious to my silent skepticism. "They want to take some time to travel, maybe see Europe for a few months, you know? Recharge and come back ready to be even better parents." "Okay," I said, trying to understand where I came into this picture. "That's the thing," she said, her tone softening, as if she were leading me into a trap. "They were hoping, well, we were all hoping that you could maybe step in for a bit, help take care of the kids while they're gone." I felt my stomach drop. My job wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I'd worked hard to get where I was, even if it wasn't where I ultimately saw myself. Giving it up to be my sister's kid's caretaker wasn't exactly in the cards. "Mom, you're asking me to quit my job to babysit?" "Not babysit, Liam," she said, laughing lightly as if I were being absurd. "It's family, and they'll pay you, of course. It would only be for a little while, just until they're back." I hesitated. The idea was tempting, but only because my job didn't fulfill me the way I'd hoped it would. "And you're sure they'd pay?" "Because I can't leave my job if this is just a family favor." "Of course, sweetheart. They wouldn't expect you to do it for free. Family takes care of family, but you'd be compensated fairly. You'd be able to make some money and spend time with your nieces and nephews. Isn't that wonderful?" It sounded almost reasonable. If I left my job, I could save on rent by moving back in with my parents, which would ease some financial pressure. I could use the time to rethink my career, maybe even look into something I'd enjoy more. And the way Mom described it, it sounded like I'd be helping, not sacrificing. "Let me think about it," I said finally, my mind already churning through the logistics. But she pressed on, persistent as always. "Oh, honey, please. It would mean the world to Haley, and it would be so good for the kids to be with family. They'll have someone who really loves them around, not just some stranger." Before I knew it, I'd said yes, convinced that this was a win-win for everyone. The first few days weren't too bad. The kids were sweet, albeit energetic, and I felt a strange sense of pride in being the dependable Uncle Liam. But as the days turned into weeks, I began realizing that this job was far from what I'd imagined. Haley and Brandon's quick trip to Europe extended from a month to 6 weeks, then 2 months. My sister was living it up on her Instagram, posting beach photos, city explorations, and fancy dinners. I was stuck cleaning up spilled milk, refereeing sibling fights, and putting kids to bed with the faint hope that my paycheck would come through soon. Then, one evening, when I called Mom to ask when I'd be seeing some of the promised compensation, she surprised me with a comment that took the air out of my lungs. "Oh, sweetheart, don't be silly. You're family. You wouldn't expect Haley to pay you, would you?" I didn't even know how to respond. The words hung in the air, a mixture of disbelief and anger swelling in my chest. Not expect to be paid. I'd left my job, my apartment, my entire life for this. And now they wanted me to do it for free? "You promised me," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "You said I'd be compensated." She laughed again, that same lighthearted, dismissive chuckle. Oh, honey, families don't work that way. Haley and Brandon are so grateful for your help. It's such a wonderful thing you're doing for them. It was surreal, honestly. I kept replaying the conversation with my mom, trying to understand where things had gone so wrong. I'd uprooted my life, given up a stable job, and all for what? To be told that, because I was family, I didn't deserve to be paid? I sat alone in the living room after putting the kids to bed, trying to make sense of everything. Maybe there'd been some misunderstanding, I reasoned. Haley and Brandon hadn't exactly said this directly. It had come from Mom. Surely, they would recognize that I needed compensation to survive. They couldn't possibly expect me to just do this for free. But as the days went by, no money showed up, and my calls to Haley and Brandon went unanswered. Occasionally, I'd get a text, something short and cheerful. Hey, everything good? Hope the kids aren't too wild. We'll be back soon. But any question I posed about payment was ignored, brushed under the rug. At first, I tried to stay positive. This was temporary, after all. But temporary stretched on as weeks turned into months, and my savings began dwindling fast. I started picking up side gigs online just to cover basic expenses, squeezing freelance work into the few hours I had to myself while the kids were asleep. Every day felt like a race against the clock, balancing childcare with work that barely paid, all while my resentment simmered. One evening, after another exhausting day of feeding, bathing, and putting the kids to bed, I sat down with my parents to bring it up again. I had to clear things up, to make them see how unfair this arrangement was. Mom, Dad, I began, trying to keep my tone calm. We need to talk about this arrangement. I'm barely getting by here. I can't keep doing this for free. Dad looked up from his newspaper, frowning. Son, you're living here rent-free, aren't you? We feed you, too. Seems like you're getting plenty in return. I couldn't believe it. Plenty? I gave up my job for this. I moved back home. I'm practically raising Haley's kids single-handedly. I'm not asking for charity. I just want what I was promised. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Liam, you know Haley's always had a rough time. She's been through a lot. You should be grateful you can help her like this. I could feel my hands clench into fists. What exactly has Haley been through that's worse than what anyone else deals with? She's out there traveling and living her best life while I'm stuck. Don't be dramatic, Liam, Mom sighed, like she was trying to calm a child. This is what families do. We make sacrifices for each other. I let out a humorless laugh. And where exactly is her sacrifice? They both looked at me, confused, as if I'd said something absurd. She's Haley, Mom finally said, as if that explained everything. And maybe, in their world, it did. Haley was the golden child, the beloved daughter who could do no wrong. And I, the one they could depend on to do whatever they needed. After that night, something shifted. I didn't stop taking care of the kids. Of course not. They were just kids, and it wasn't their fault they'd been thrown into this situation. But my resentment toward Haley, Brandon, and even my parents grew with each passing day. The family group texts were the worst, as my mom constantly shared Haley's travel updates with pride. Every photo of Haley grinning in front of some European landmark felt like a punch to the gut. She was out there living a dream while I was, doing what I'd never dreamed of. I eventually managed to corner Haley on a video call one evening after the kids were in bed. The look on her face when she realized why I was calling spoke volumes. Oh, Liam, you look tired, she said with a sympathetic smile. The kids aren't too much, are they? No, it's fine. I wanted to talk about the payment we discussed, though. I haven't seen anything come through yet. She laughed lightly, as if I'd made some sort of joke. Oh, that. Gosh, you know how expensive Europe is, right? Brandon and I have been stretching every dollar here. So, there's no money? I asked, the dread settling in my stomach. Well, not exactly, she said, waving her hand. We're planning to get something to you soon. But, Liam, we're family. I hope you're not doing this just for the money. I could feel my patience thinning. I left my job, Haley. I'm here full-time with the kids. This isn't something I can afford to do out of the goodness of my heart. She blinked, as if I were speaking a different language. Liam, you know how much it means to us that you're helping. Brandon and I can never thank you enough for the sacrifice you're making. The word sacrifice hit a nerve. What sacrifice have you made, Haley? Her face fell, hurt flashing in her eyes. Liam, that's unfair. You know I struggled with postpartum. I needed this. I couldn't believe it. She was playing the victim while I was the one cleaning up messes and managing meltdowns. The anger that had been simmering for weeks finally boiled over. What about me? I snapped. Have you even thought about what I've given up? Haley sighed, exasperated. You're overreacting, Liam. Seriously, it's not like you were happy at that job anyway. Isn't it nice to be with family? To do something meaningful? The conversation ended in a stalemate. She brushed me off with a promise to figure something out and hung up before I could press her further. As I stared at the blank screen, I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and, worst of all, helplessness. Days turned into weeks. I kept juggling childcare and side gigs, losing sleep and patience by the minute. My parents continued to insist that I should be grateful for the opportunity to help out, as if I'd been given some grand gift. And yet, the only thing I felt was a growing pit of resentment, deep and heavy. One night, as I was scrolling through Instagram, I saw Haley had posted another photo. She was laughing, holding a cocktail in one hand, with Brandon's arm around her shoulders. The caption read, "Living our best lives. Nothing like seeing the world with your soulmate." Something snapped in me. I stared at the photo, my blood boiling. They were out there, living their dream, completely oblivious to the fact that I was drowning back here. I glanced at the clock. It was almost midnight. I put the phone down and walked out into the cool night air, needing to clear my head. I sat on the porch steps, breathing in the night, feeling a mix of fury and frustration claw at me. A voice in the back of my mind whispered what I'd been avoiding for weeks. They're never going to pay you, Liam. They're using you. And they don't care, For the first time, I considered just leaving, packing my things, getting in the car, and driving off. But then, the image of Mason, Ava, and Caleb came to mind. Their innocent faces smiling up at me every morning. They didn't deserve to be abandoned, but neither did I deserve this. That night, I made a promise to myself. Things couldn't go on this way. If they thought I'd continue to be their free nanny indefinitely, they were sorely mistaken. The next time I saw my parents, I'd make it clear. I wasn't going to be a doormat any longer. I had no choice but to stand up for myself. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect. I'd given up so much already, and if my family thought I'd just keep going along with this indefinitely, they were wrong. I was done being the obedient son and the reliable brother. So, a few days after that night on the porch, I sat down with my parents and laid it all out. "I need to talk to you both," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "This arrangement isn't working. I need to get paid, or I have to find something else. I can't keep living like this." Mom looked up from her cup of tea, her face registering surprise. "Liam, honey, don't be dramatic." I clenched my jaw. "I'm not being dramatic. I left my job for this. I need an income." Dad put down his newspaper and sighed, like he was preparing himself to deal with a child throwing a tantrum. "Liam, we all have to make sacrifices. It's family. Money shouldn't be the main focus." "It's easy for you to say that," I replied, my voice barely hiding my frustration. "You have your retirement, your income. I have nothing right now. Haley and Brandon promised me they'd compensate me, and they haven't. I'm doing all the work while they're out living it up." Mom looked almost offended. "Haley needs this break, Liam. She's been under so much stress. You don't know what it's like raising 3 children full-time." I could feel my patience slipping. "Actually, I do know what it's like, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm raising her kids full-time right now." Dad let out a slow sigh. "Liam, we thought you'd be happy to help. You've always been so good with kids. And honestly, it's good for you. You've never really settled down or committed to anything, and this is giving you some stability." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Stability? They thought I needed stability? Stability? I'm living in my old room, broke, without a job. How is that stability? Mom reached over, patting my hand with a pitying look. Liam, you've always been, well, a bit lost, honey. Maybe you need this more than you think. I felt a surge of anger that I hadn't felt before. They didn't see me as capable or independent. To them, I was someone who needed their guidance, their pity. Meanwhile, Haley, the sister they worshipped, was free to do whatever she wanted. She could leave her responsibilities behind, and they'd still look at her with admiration. I didn't know what else to say. Clearly, no amount of reasoning would make them see my side. So I decided I'd confront Haley directly, whether she liked it or not. If they wouldn't take me seriously, maybe she would. After a few days of back-and-forth messages, Haley finally agreed to call me. I waited until the kids were asleep, then took the call in the quiet of the kitchen. Hey, Liam. Haley's voice was bright and chipper, as if nothing were wrong. How's everything going with the kids? Fine, I replied shortly, not wanting to waste time. I wanted to talk about the arrangement. You promised to pay me for taking care of the kids, but I haven't seen a dime. There was a brief pause, and I could almost hear her calculating her response. Oh, Liam, she said with a sigh, we're just a bit tight on cash right now, you know? Traveling is more expensive than we thought. Then why are you still traveling? I asked bluntly. If you're so tight on money, shouldn't you come back and take care of your kids? Her laugh was light, airy, like she thought I was joking. Liam, it's not that simple. We already planned the trip, and Brandon and I need this time together. You understand, right? We'll pay you as soon as we're able. I could feel my patience running thin. When? I can't keep doing this without income. I gave up my job for this. Oh, you didn't like that job anyway, she replied breezily. I thought this would be a nice change for you. A break, you know? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. A break? Was she serious? She thought I was on some kind of relaxing retreat while she and Brandon were out sightseeing and dining in the best European restaurants? You promised, Haley. I trusted you. You said I'd be compensated. Her voice took on an annoyed edge. Liam, it's not my fault if you're being unreasonable. Family does things for each other, not because of money. I thought you'd understand that. Honestly, it's a bit disappointing that you're so focused on this. Disappointing. She was disappointed in me? Disappointing? I repeated, barely able to believe her words. I've put my life on hold for your kids, and you're telling me I'm disappointing for expecting you to follow through on a promise? You know, this is why you've never gotten far in life. Liam, she said, her voice ice-cold. You're always so focused on what's fair and right. Life isn't fair, and sometimes you just have to suck it up. The conversation ended soon after that, with Haley hanging up, clearly annoyed that I wasn't supportive of her needs. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the wall, my mind racing with everything she'd said. It was like she didn't even see me as a person, just someone who existed to fill in the gaps of her life. Her words echoed in my mind, about how I was disappointing, how I'd never gotten far. She saw me as someone to be used, to be dismissed, not as her brother. It was a realization that felt both crushing and liberating at the same time. After that call, I started seriously considering my options. My family had made it clear they wouldn't be giving me any support or payment. And it wasn't like I could just leave the kids. They depended on me, and as much as I wanted to escape, I couldn't abandon them. They were innocent in all this, and I'd grown attached to them, especially Mason, the oldest, who was starting to see me as a father figure. So, I made a plan. I would take on as many side gigs as I could manage, build up some savings, and start looking for a new job. It wouldn't be easy, balancing that with childcare, but I was done hoping my family would come through for me. I had to rely on myself, just as I always had. Weeks went by, and every day was a grind. I was running on fumes, barely sleeping, and the resentment I felt toward Haley and my parents grew with each passing day. I kept seeing Haley's social media updates, her smiling selfies in front of iconic landmarks, captions about living her best life. Every time I saw her face, that smug, carefree grin, I felt a wave of anger so intense it shocked me. Finally, one evening, my parents invited me for a family talk in the living room. I was braced for more empty platitudes and guilt trips, but what they had to say was even worse than I'd imagined. Liam, Dad began, looking serious, We've been talking, and we think it's time you accepted that this role with Haley's kids is, well, maybe it's where you're meant to be. My heart dropped. What do you mean? Mom chimed in, her voice soft. You're so good with the kids, honey. Maybe this is your purpose, to help Haley and be there for the family. I couldn't believe it. They were telling me my purpose was to be Haley's permanent babysitter. Are you saying you don't want me to move on? To find my own job? They exchanged glances. Liam, it's not that, Mom said, patting my arm. We just think you should be grateful for being needed. Haley has such an important life, and she needs your support. I stood up, my whole body trembling with anger. You think I'm here to serve Haley? That my purpose is to put my life on hold for her forever? Dad sighed. You're being emotional, Liam. Family is family. You'll understand that one day. I walked out of that conversation feeling hollow, the reality finally settling over me like a thick, suffocating blanket. They didn't see me as my own person, with my own dreams or aspirations. To them, I was a shadow, a fixture to fill in for Haley when she needed me and disappear when she didn't. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I made a decision. I couldn't stay here. Not in this role, not with these people who saw me as nothing more than a tool to be used. It was time to start planning my exit, no matter how difficult it would be. My plan was simple: save enough to get out and disappear quietly. But life had a way of complicating even the simplest plans. I started pouring myself into any freelance gig I could find. Data entry, copywriting, anything that paid. Nights became my time to work, my only hours of quiet after the kids went to bed. I was exhausted, barely sleeping, but there was a sliver of hope that kept me going. Then, just as I'd saved enough to make an escape feasible, I got a message from Haley. She and Brandon were extending their trip again. I read her text over and over, feeling that old, familiar anger bubbling up. They weren't even pretending to come home anymore. This wasn't a vacation. It was an escape from their responsibilities, and I was the fool holding everything together while they floated from city to city. The next day, Mom cornered me in the kitchen with a cheerful look on her face. Liam, great news, she chirped, as if she were about to announce a holiday bonus. Haley and Brandon decided to extend their trip. Isn't that exciting? I couldn't help myself. Exciting? For who? Her expression faltered, a slight wrinkle of confusion on her forehead. For all of us, of course. They're having such a lovely time, and you've been so wonderful with the kids. They feel so lucky to have you. Lucky? I repeated, incredulous. Mom, they left me with their kids for months. This wasn't supposed to be a permanent arrangement. She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Liam. You're wonderful with the kids. It's like you're finally doing something meaningful. I felt my throat tighten. What do you mean, finally doing something meaningful? I had a job, a life. I left it for Haley because you said this would be temporary. She sighed, clearly exasperated. Liam, honey, sometimes we find our purpose in unexpected places. This could be good for you, you know? Teaching you responsibility, giving you a sense of family. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. A sense of family? Responsibility? The way she said it, you'd think I'd been a drifter my whole life, lost and aimless. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her see how warped all of this was. But I knew it would be useless. Mom, I need to be paid, I said finally, keeping my tone as steady as I could. I can't keep doing this for free. She looked at me, her gaze softening with that familiar mix of pity and disappointment. Oh, Liam, families don't do things for money. Haley and Brandon appreciate you, and isn't that more important than a paycheck? No, it's not, I said, louder than I intended. Because appreciation doesn't pay my bills. Appreciation doesn't give me back my time or my career. This isn't family, it's exploitation. She looked genuinely hurt. How can you say that? We've given you so much. Given me so much? You mean a room in a house I grew up in? Food I don't even have time to eat because I'm taking care of their kids? This is manipulation, plain and simple. Dad, who'd been reading his newspaper in the corner, looked up, irritated. Enough, Liam. Stop acting like a child. Haley deserves to enjoy her life after everything she's been through. You need to stop being so selfish. Selfish. That word was a slap to the face. I was the selfish one? I'd given up everything, worked tirelessly day and night, while Haley and Brandon gallivanted across Europe. How could they look at me, after all I'd done, and see anything but self-sacrifice? But there it was, plain as day. They saw me as less, as someone who was only useful when serving Haley. I wasn't an equal in this family. I was a support act for their golden child, a disposable helper they could guilt into service whenever it suited them. I walked out, my head spinning, rage boiling up inside me like a volcano ready to blow. I knew I had to make a choice. I could keep sacrificing myself, keep being their obedient doormat, or I could finally stand up and walk away. A few days later, when I was at my breaking point, Haley called. She was calling to check in, but really just wanted to brag about how beautiful Rome was. "Oh, Liam, it's magical," she gushed, barely pausing to let me speak. "Brandon and I are just so in love with it here. I can't wait to show you all the pictures." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "When are you coming back, Haley?" "It's been months." "Oh, we're planning something soon. But honestly, Liam, the kids just seem so happy with you. They adore their uncle, Liam. It's like, well, it's like they were meant to be with you. You know?" The weight of her words hit me like a boulder. "What are you saying, Haley? That you're not coming back?" She let out a nervous laugh. No, of course we're coming back. Eventually. But this time is so important for Brandon and me. We feel like we're finally living. Finally living." The words felt like a cruel joke. I'd been reduced to a full-time, unpaid nanny so she and Brandon could live, and she wanted me to be grateful for it? I couldn't hold it back anymore. "Haley, I'm done. You either come back and take care of your kids, or I'm leaving." The silence on the other end of the line was thick, and when she spoke again, her tone was icy. "Liam, don't be so dramatic. You're really going to abandon your nieces and nephew? You abandoned them the minute you left." I shot back. "You left them with me, promised me pay, then cut me loose to struggle on my own. I'm not your servant, Haley. I'm your brother, and I deserve respect." She scoffed, and I could almost hear her rolling her eyes. "You've always been so self-righteous, Liam. Always so focused on fairness. Life isn't fair. You should be grateful for this chance to help." Her words stung, but something inside me shifted. I was no longer angry, just done. I was done trying to be the son, the brother, the uncle they expected me to be. I hung up without another word. That evening, I packed up my things. I left a note on the kitchen table for my parents, explaining that I'd had enough, that I couldn't stay any longer. The kids were asleep, and though it broke my heart to leave them, I knew it was what I had to do. I wasn't abandoning them. I was saving myself. As I pulled out of the driveway, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief mixed with sadness. I'd done everything I could for my family, given them more than they'd ever given me in return. But it was clear now, they'd never change. I could spend my whole life serving them, and it would never be enough. The next morning, I got a furious call from my mom. "Liam, what on earth do you think you're doing?" she shouted, her voice tight with anger. "Your father and I woke up to find you gone. What kind of son leaves like that?" "The kind who's been taken advantage of," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I've done everything you asked. I've given up my life for Haley and her kids, and you've shown me nothing but disrespect. I can't do it anymore." "Liam," she said, her voice softening into a pitying tone. "We were only trying to help you find purpose. You're not abandoning your family, are you?" Her manipulation hit me hard, but I was ready for it. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm finally standing up for myself. And if you can't understand that, then maybe it's you who doesn't understand family." There was silence on the other end before she spoke again, her tone defeated. I thought you'd understand how important family is." "I do, Mom. But family goes both ways. And if you can't respect me, then I need to find my own way." I hung up, knowing it was the last time I'd let her guilt me into anything. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from their expectations, their manipulation, their suffocating control. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew one thing. I was finally living for myself. I drove away from my parents' house with a sense of finality, the weight of their expectations lifting with each mile. But as I left, a bittersweet pang settled in my chest. It was hard to leave the kids. They'd become my world in those months, and even though the situation had been unfair, I genuinely loved them. I just couldn't stay under those conditions, constantly sacrificing my own life for my sister's freedom. I found a small apartment in a nearby town, nothing special, but it was my own. The first few days felt strange, quiet, almost too quiet. After months of managing chaos, the silence was both a relief and an unfamiliar companion. But I started sleeping better, and I felt a little stronger each day. One evening, a message from Haley popped up on my phone. I hesitated before opening it, bracing myself for whatever emotional manipulation might be waiting. Liam, I heard you left. I can't believe you'd abandon your family like this. I never thought you'd let us down. I stared at the message, feeling a familiar rush of guilt. But then, I took a deep breath and replied. Haley, I didn't abandon you. I just decided to stop abandoning myself. You have your life and I need mine. I hit send and blocked her number, knowing it was time to put some boundaries in place. With Haley and my parents out of reach, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I found a new job, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me the space to start thinking about my future. For the first time in years, I had the freedom to ask myself what I wanted, not what my family expected. Gradually, I started reconnecting with old friends, people I hadn't seen much since moving back home. I found comfort in their support and was surprised by how many of them understood my decision, encouraging me to pursue my own path. Then, about a month after I'd left, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I was shocked to hear Mason's small voice on the other end. Uncle Liam? Mommy says you're gone. Are you coming back? My heart twisted. I'd worried about this moment, about how the kids might feel. But I took a deep breath and answered gently. I'm not coming back to live there, buddy, but I'll always be here for you. You can call me anytime, okay? He seemed to understand, and we spent a few minutes talking about his day, about school and his new favorite toys. I hung up feeling a pang of sadness, but also a sense of peace. I hadn't left because I didn't care. I'd left because I did care, about myself and finally, about my own future. Over time, my life began to feel like my own again. The quiet no longer felt empty but comforting. My days were simple but satisfying, filled with small wins that reminded me why I'd made the choice to walk away. It wasn't easy. Family wasn't something I could just cut off without pain. But every day, I grew a little more certain that I'd done the right thing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living in Haley's shadow. And while it cost me a family who refused to see my worth, it gave me something even more precious: my independence, my voice, and the freedom to build a life on my own terms.